once more. Hello everyone and greetings from the Cognitive Yoga Bootcamp. This is the Halloween edition with some deep insights into the spiritualization of thinking with my dear colleague Scott Hicks.
And my dear friend Jeremy Quick. So, what is thinking? And how do we use it to open our minds to new places we haven't seen before, to open our vistas to new lands, to become more moral, to think in more creative ways? That's what we can take a look at today.
Yeah, so I guess the root thing is that Scott has a new book called Resurrection of Thinking, which I was very inspired when it came out a couple of days ago. And I just asked him, could Scott really share me his ways of spiritualizing his thinking, because I'm a kind of newbie here in one sense, and because here's the guy who has been breaking through those layers of death, well, I mean like basic thinking. Would you like to guide me and guide the listeners or watchers?
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, let's just take a look at it in a real general way and see if we can make some headway or make some heartway into the issues that are at hand, and hopefully some of you will enjoy it a bit. I think it's always a good idea to start with an object. We happen to have, for it's the Halloween edition, the Pez dispenser, Eye of Sauron, collector's item now. I mean, this thing is worth about $1.15 now, so it's good. It's good that we have this, and it's nice to start with absolutely everyday consciousness, our normal empirical consciousness, our normal view that we have of the world, where we can see things with, absolutely up-to-date 2018 perception. I see everything around me, the lights, and your amazing costume, and Pez dispenser, and my hat, and myself on the screen, my glasses, everything. And then also I can think about them in the normal ways that I consider things in a healthy contemporary human being. So I can look at the costume and associate it with video games and assassins from the past, and I look at Pez dispenser and think about J.R.R. Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings and everything that happened in the movie and the horrible films, the Hobbit films that came out afterwards, and I can make logical assumptions about things. I could, just normal, absolutely up-to-date consciousness.
And that's something we all know. So Scott, please tell me, if this is what we do every day, right? We think things and we think what we see. We think the thoughts, our opinions about the world. So why should we think? Why should we develop our thinking in the first place? And if we are able to develop it, to what we are developing it to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that thinking is something that it has some incredible aspects to it which we don't recognize in ordinary consciousness, and it's only through opening ourselves to certain dimensions, to certain aspects of thinking, that we start to recognize what's really happening there, and we get a little taste of it. I mean, to really experience the full cosmic thinking is, it's a shattering experience in a way, because you're really recognizing that you're coming up against spiritual beings, and recognizing that every single thought is a spiritual being. So that's the highest dimension of intuition, where this is recognized, and that's a rare experience. But we can already get to really interesting and creative spaces when we take the first steps in spiritualizing thinking via cognitive yoga, or in the gospel of the physical world kind of approach that we've been using, or in the way that we approach thinking and perception in the philosophy of freedom work we've been doing in the Global School, directed by Yeshayahu Ben Haron,
writer of the book,
yeah.
Cognitive Yoga.
Yeah. So it really, if we can break through, it helps us see a part of ourselves that we basically forget in everyday consciousness.
So let me just summarize what I think I heard you saying. Besides or in the middle or the other side of the thinking that we just use to name and recognize and opinionize things in the life, there is another way or another plane of thinking that you spoke about, being a cosmic thinking, through which we can recognize that all the thoughts are also spiritual beings, and we, through thinking, can experience something that is higher than in our daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. So I think we should try to demonstrate a little bit about this path and the different ways of approach that one can have in it. So I think maybe if we start with something like this, we could start with a Pez dispenser, we could start with a bass bow, and just go through what we see with our eyes and what we think about it. And then we can move into a little bit more pure thinking, where we're just focused on what we're thinking directly rather than what we perceive. So let's take a look at the bass bow, because I think it's pretty visible here. What is it? I mean, what do you see? What do you think when you look at this?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is a violin, and the question why that's not the violin thing, but it's made of wood. I think these are some horse hair, well, presumably. It's a brown colored. It has some black here, and there's a nice round knob here. And wow, this is Abalone, some kind of, how do you call it?
Mother of pearl, I think.
Yeah, pearl. Yeah, that's about it. I can give you more details, and yeah, please guide me.
Okay. So what we want to do at the beginning is, if we're trying to separate off what's thinking from what is perceived with our senses. So when I look at it, I see that this is wood, for example, a specific kind of wood they use to make bows out of. But I'm not seeing the fact that it's wood, or it's a particular kind of wood. That's an idea which I have, which I'm associating with the particular appearance that's visible to me.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that when I see wood here, I actually don't see wood, but I see a percept, and my thinking is actually telling me or giving me an insight or intuition even that that's the wood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what
right.
we want to separate, that we don't see here the concept wood, but we are actually making distance between the percept, that is, that brown something here. Mm-hmm. This is difficult already. Mm-hmm. And my thinking that is able to hold a concept or idea of wood in my consciousness.
Yes. Yeah, notice it's in your consciousness, so it's not something you're not perceiving. Mm-hmm. You're not perceiving the concept of this particular kind of wood in your perception. Rather, it's taking place in another sphere. We all understand the idea of the mind's eye. So we're looking in the mind's eye, okay, to a certain extent, but we're looking with our perceptual eye, with our sense eye, and we're seeing, okay, this is the particular appearance of this individual wood that I'm seeing from this angle at this particular moment, but it's just that.
Yeah, that's very subjective. Like subjective meaning that what I sense here, you want me to concentrate on now.
Yeah, I'd like you to separate that from everything you think about it. So the idea of a violin, like you're not seeing a violin here at all. In fact, it's a bass bow. It has nothing to do with a violin. So there's a great example of something that you were associating with it in the normal flow of thinking, where we just notice how you join together various ideas, various mental pictures. You might be able to see a violin in your mind's eye. When you look at this, you might see someone playing a violin in your mind's eye. You might see it as an image. It might be connected to times when you held a bow, times when you saw a symphony play or something like that.
Yeah, I see those all in my thinking, but
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but what you are describing now, or what I experience now, are the thoughts. So I have a picture of violin, I have a memory. Yeah, I have memory of violin, I have, they call it mental picture, right, in philosophy of freedom, or representation. So, but that's not the thinking itself. That's a picture that my thinking puts there. So how can I go through that?
Well, that's the next step. So we have to then separate the mental picture from a concept, recognize what a concept is, and then there are deeper elements there that we can go into also.
Let's go there now.
Okay. First thing to recognize is, so we're turning away from our particular impressions of the bow. The bow's still here, but now we're looking into the realms of the mental pictures. So if we look into our mind's eye and see someone playing a contrabass, this is an upright bass bow, but one could see someone playing the violin. Let's focus on the violin. Because I think it's something people can more associate with. And when you're thinking about a violin, you might even see the mental picture. Some people see mental pictures more clearly in the mind's eye. For some people, it's more just a word or a string of words.
Yeah, I see it here before me as like almost as visible that I see the percepts in front of me. And I can move the violin, I can, make it bigger, smaller, I can change its color, I can even think about the violin made of metal. So there's some activity.
Yeah, you can be really creative there. I mean, you could be kind of infinitely creative there. But let's hone in on precisely the moment by moment things which are taking place in our thinking. If we awaken the will inside of our thinking, we recognize that we choose whether we can focus on one particular concept or another particular concept, on one memory or another. So, for example, in one region of our mental plane, let's say, for a second, we can look at someone playing the violin, let's say the concept of a violin or the notion of a violin. And then
I have here a person playing violin, and I have here, I'm illustrating just this, but I have here a knowing that it is a violin.
Yeah,
right?
Okay. You have a knowing as well. That's good. Let's hold on to that for a second. And then when you can turn into a different dimension, and you can see that you might be able to think of, let's say, an elephant.
Okay.
On the other hand.
Okay, there's an elephant. Of course, I can think elephant, and I know it's an elephant, and it's different than violin.
Yeah, that's part of the point. So you're able to differentiate in your thinking between one mental picture and another mental picture. You can see an elephant here in your mind's eye, and you can go to the violin on the other side. But if you slow it down a little bit, who is it that's controlling the motion from one, looking at one mental picture in one region to another region of the mind's eye? Who is it that's controlling that activity? That's one kind of question to ask. So how is it that one is controlling the viewing of one mental picture versus another?
Well, I would say that there is mental picture of elephant, and now I'm kind of deconstructing the mental picture. I'm trying to move to a violin, because the mental picture can't itself, like elephant can't just turn into a violin. So there's a space between, like you were describing, and now I'm in, so to speak, in the nothingness. But there's an activity of I know it. I think it's the will that you were speaking of. And now slowly, slowly, slowly there is a violin. And the mental picture is there. I go back. So violin, a little bit less emptiness, movement, energy, and elephant.
Okay. So you recognize the difference between looking at two mental pictures, but with understanding alongside them. So you said that when I look at the mental picture of a violin inside my mind's eye, I'm not suddenly in a place where I'm seeing an unknown picture. I'm not seeing something that I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
it's not like an abstract. It's not like an abstract art piece or something where I can't say what it is. But here you have an idea of what it is immediately. But so notice that even in your mental picturing activity, you still have an idea of the category to which this mental picture of a violin belongs. And that's another element of thinking which we're going to dig into a bit more. Likewise, when you see the appearance of the elephant in your mind's eye, of course, you already found the mental picture because you understood what an elephant was. You understood the category of an elephant, the boundaries of an elephant, and you turned to that, and then the mental picture appears.
So yeah, like I was experiencing that I first had a knowing that I will picture elephant, and the elephant appeared. It's as if I know these things so truly. I mean, that I can picture cello, I can picture violin, I can picture guitar, I can picture everything, and it just works flawlessly.
That's right. So we're trying now to take a slightly deeper step, and this is a difficult situation for many people. I hope that you out there, you'll be able to follow a little bit through with this to find it, because when you see and experience a concept for the first time as a real intuition, it's always really surprising and a bit gratifying in a way, because you're opening up a dimension in thinking that we hardly are ever conscious of. Of course, we're using it. We're standing in the middle of the concept world continuously. We function in it, but basically with only half consciousness. So
you mean that this space that we are now exploring is happening all the time when I'm alive, and it's naming, and it tells me that I know and cognize all these things around me, because if I didn't have a thinking, I wouldn't know anything, because the thinking tells me everything I need to know. And is it also connected with my speaking? If I didn't know what I was gonna speak, I couldn't form words. So thinking comes before my daily consciousness, so to speak. Okay, but let's go on.
Yeah. Now, you're right, because if the concepts are at the bottom of any knowledge whatsoever, if a person only had mental pictures, they never would be able to think. A mental picture itself is not a thought, because it doesn't have meaning in itself. It's only
we are looking for a meaning.
Yeah, we're looking for meaning. So how do I experience meaning at all?
Okay.
How do I understand myself that the meaning of an elephant is this particular thing, an animal that's quite large, that's generally gray. There's two different subspecies of them, the Indian and the African elephants, and they have tusks and ivory, and and they like peanuts, and they can take their trunk and blow water all over the place. So, but when we are looking at the concept of an elephant, we're not looking at any individual elephant. We're looking at the idea of the concept of an elephant in general, any elephant whatsoever. So any elephant whatsoever could even be elephants that are no longer in existence, or an elephant that might have different characteristics from the elephant that we see in the world now.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Guide me through.
Yeah, so I'm asking you to focus a bit more on the boundaries of where does the concept of an elephant, where is it experienced in your consciousness, and where are the boundaries between an elephant and, let's say, something that's quite close to an elephant, like let's say a cow,
Okay.
like a milk cow, a Holstein, for example. So how do you know when you're moving from the concept of an elephant into a concept of a cow that we use to produce milk? And you notice that there's a particular mental activity here. And I'm also going to ask you to try not to use images. That these ideas are pure, a bit purer.
But how? Okay, what I can follow is that there is an elephant. There's a big picture of elephant, and then I move to. Yeah, there's a cow, picture of cow. So, but are you saying that I can do that without having pictures? So just saying that there's a cow, and of course I want also to erase the word of cow and everything that is mentally represented now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I try to take, there's a cow. Okay, I'm thinking of a cow. I take a picture away. Okay, there's a word of cow. I take the word away. Okay, there's a nothing. But if I intensify that nothing, I know that what I think, what I'm holding in my consciousness is a cow without anything. And now you are asking me, how can I change to an concept of an elephant without having any mental representation in my mind? Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's that's something that functions in the region where we're trying to explore.
Okay. So
you see that there's an intensification of thinking activity there, and one might try to reach a little bit deeper into, let's say, the concept of a cow, so that what does it mean for any cow to appear whatsoever? And we recognize that at this moment there is the notion of thinking that can awaken with a strong individual I, so that there can be an I who thinks this.
Okay, let's not go there yet. Let me describe where I'm at.
Okay.
So I'm in the nothingness of cow. Cow in nothingness, and I move to a nothingness that is elephant. Yeah, I was able to do that. Mm-hmm. And now I try to go back. Wow. I'm in a cow. I know it, but I don't know how I know it. I just experience the knowing. Back to elephant, and I can see there's a movement of energy, or movement of intensity, which I don't see, which I just, it's like I'm in that movement. Okay, now, yeah, please, guide me.
Okay.
Like slowly
yeah.
From here to.
Yeah, I think you said it there when you said that you're in the movement. So you said you were in the movement. You were the one who was conducting the movement. And in fact, if we look into the region of our entire experience at this moment, we should recognize that we're actually in the environment. A part of you is in the thinking sphere, and the thinking sphere is all around us. Thinking is happening all around us, and you're able to move through the various, let's say, the liquids or the air or the warmth of this thinking in which we're swimming.
Okay, let me recapitulate
okay.
that. So I'm in the nothingness again. Nothingness shifts from cow nothingness to elephant nothingness, and I am in that intensity. It's like a kind of liquid type of activity. I feel myself partly being inside my body, but I also feel that activity to belong to some another region or another state of consciousness. And I try to intensify that. And what happens is the more light shines in, and you said this is the thinking that is also outside of us, all around us. How do I make a move? How can I prove that to myself that my thinking is all around me?
I think this is the region where we come up against certain kind of boundaries, because there are essentially moral boundaries which lie in this region. So it's not so easy to say anymore that I am going to use my subjective power to somehow break through this wall of nothingness, or to be able to experience a bit more light. It's something that thinking doesn't just give up its secrets so easily, and we don't want it to just submit to our normal consciousness, to our normal sense of I'm in a body and I'm thinking of preformed objects outside of me. That's not real. So now we recognize that there's a flow in thinking, a flow in our feeling, a flow on all sides. And we really at this point have to open up the heart. The opening up the heart is really almost essential to making real progress in the spiritualization of thinking. Now that we've intensified our head forces so much.
Why is that? Why heart?
Because it's the center of morality. It's the center of the spiritual part of the human being. It's the place where we can see most clearly who we are. We have to deal straightforwardly with these moral issues of am I really trying to find the spiritual essence of thinking because of my own lust after spiritual experience, or my own desire for personal power. And the heart is the place where one has to go through this confrontation, this confrontation with let's say the guardian who stands at the boundary between everyday thinking and spiritualized thinking, before one is able to see oneself from the outside with a bit more completeness.
Okay, so guide me there, like step by step, so I can describe how I'm unfolding it. I'm here in that lightful movement of nothingness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're there, then I'm asking you to, let's say, if one is focused on the concept of an elephant, if one is looking into all the things that an elephant can be.
So I'm bringing mental pictures back, you mean?
Well, no. Now you're opening up the backside of the pure experience of concepts where thinking is active, and a light is shining through the backside, which comes to you from the outside of the.
How do I do that? Like, what's the?
Well, I think you have to go through a particular moral boundary where you open yourself up to. You open yourself up to failure, where you say, I don't know if this is going to succeed. I don't have any power.
Yeah, I don't have any power here. Yeah. I'm just standing here in the nothingness of elephant and just waiting.
Well, we kind of ask that with an open heart, that the grace of the spirit of the elephant might come into our thinking.
So there's a moment of grace, moment of I can't do it myself all the way. So there's are you describing that there's a higher element involved that by its grace can take me outside of this bubble, this boundary?
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of, I'm not getting lost, but it's a vast experience.
Yeah, I think there's two things here. One is that to get to the point where, first of all, one's eye has to be totally awake through the whole thing. So you have to.
So how do I do that?
Well, you have to awaken the sense that you are you're conscious of yourself. You're totally connected to everyday consciousness.
Yes.
You're totally connected to. In a moment, we could turn back to everyday consciousness without the slightest problem.
Yep, that's there.
We can think through things logically without any problem. But we're also, by the same token, we are experiencing that there's an I, which is the thinker, who can begin any train of thought, who can orient himself inside any region of thinking, who can create a new thought out of this moment of kind of like emptiness, this moment of formlessness.
Okay, let me try that.
Okay.
So I'm there, I'm here in my body, like you said, I'm fully self-conscious of my daily self, and at the same time I'm there weaving in this lightful, not lightful outside, I don't see light, but I experience this being in lightful streams or liquid. And you said I can begin to create any form, any thought form. So I take a circle. Yeah, I can do circle. I can take square. I can do square. I can dissolve all those pictures. I'm experiencing the concept of circle, nothingness, that I know it's a square, and I can go from square till the idea of geometry, idea of math, idea of form or logic. Wow, so I can move it that way as well. Okay, so what? Yeah, I can do that.
Right.
I'm there now.
I know, but then you have to, you have to awaken a self-intuition of your own activity, which is thinking.
What's that mean?
That means that you yourself are conscious of the being in you who is thinking at the very beginning, and this is no longer the thinker who is merely inside the body, but this is a thinker who is in a way kind of coming to us in the light from the outside.
Wow, so let me just describe what I just experienced. As if the light which I still felt being a small thing there in the periphery suddenly opened itself up, and I feel below my body, above my body, this kind of light, strong light, like strong vertical light, that is, well, I can't say anything else, that's I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beginning of these words, the beginning of the activity of thinking. I can go anywhere from here.
Yeah, that's the person who's essentially beginning the trains of speech and thought that you're creating in this self-conscious light. But it's, if we could maybe increase the moral problems a bit more, that it's not so easy to just demand that the thinker awakes, but rather to have this experience that it's thinking me, that we see a real difference between my subjective normal consciousness, which is enclosed in my body, and this active light-filled thinker who is at the center of concepts and is able to stand in the middle of conceptual beings. And what are the difficulties? One, if I might just mention one, and then you can experience it. Now, if I am intuiting the self-actuality, Aristotle had this experience of the I who was essentially thinking itself. This is the same experience, this actuality here, this energeia. And so we look back at now our memories of what it was like to think 20 minutes ago when we started this process. Mm-hmm. So we can see that the thinking, the experience of what we thought thinking was, is very different, and our whole conception of the world was quite a bit different. If we look back at our bodies, look back at our heads, we see that there's a kind of little tiny electric streams, let's say, that are moving around the head region.
Okay, let's
Yes.
Tell me how to do that. Like I'm here now in the vertical strong light, my thinker. Like, what was the first step to do?
The first step is to recognize that there is a difference at all between everyday consciousness and the I am who's thinking.
So before I was thinking in the beginning, I had only these like small pictures which I was conscious, and now the whole, I cannot even say like the whole world is more vast, but the thinking has awakened to this plane of beingness that is all around me, but I'm in the center of it. And it's as if it's a like lightful world or lightful dimension, like a space full of different possible ways and streams.
Yes, that is, it's kind of, let's say, a world of light and life, and we have our part of our being there, and that's part of our natural being, part of the an element of the thinking world that we're opening up in this time, in this age, with in the process that we just discovered. So from that world, look back to your everyday consciousness. And when you look back, there's a kind of returning, you know. You can return to the consciousness of your body because you have the faculties to control how your body works. So if you look back and see the difference, look back at the moral situation, look back at what happens in our everyday dying thinking.
So I look back and my heart in a way hurts. I feel pain of looking back. I feel like, you know, there's a shock that I'm like that small. I'm that small, like, you know, ugly being there down, and you want me to go there back. Okay, so I try to go. All right, so now I'm here. And well, let me try to go back. Whoa. So I'm able to shift between these two consciousnesses.
Yes, but you have to be able to shift while you're in both of them. So to be in the thinking, in the, let's say, the light field thinking with the eye, the vertical eye, that's not inside me, not outside me, but in a place which is spaceless, who's totally able to think and create in the midst of, let's say, like archetypal living realities, and then looking back at through the heart, with the heart open the whole time, then looking back at your normal head activity, what's happening in your head normally.
Okay, so first I turn back to look at my daily personality, my daily self, and I feel the wound. I feel the suffer again in my heart, and they want me to open it more.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Well, it's a painful thing, but somehow when I go into the middle of the pain, the heart, something in the heart starts to like become more light, and that experience of pain actually gives me a stability, like grounding. And I don't feel so much well, let me just put it that way, that I feel being more myself now, because the heart is connected with the thinker. And now if I try to intensify that, I experience my thinker becoming more whole, like as if the light becomes warm, and like flesh comes like around the lightful centerized energy flow.
Yes.
And now you said I should look back to my head.
Yeah, look back into the head, because this is the place where the the dying forces of everyday thinking take over from this living light and life. It thinks me. Well, how does it function in everyday? What do you feel in there when you look back into the head?
Well, I'm scared already. Okay, I try to look there back, and it's as if I see this like a black hole, or like black sucking, like anti force, like a that kind of thing, that it's sucking this life, this world into it. And if I try to go deeper and see what it does, well, it creates out of that what I could call thinking or sensation or perception of my daily subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's what
yeah, and
that's a kind of shocking experience.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I have the feeling that when I follow you through it and come back myself a bit more into the head, you have the feeling that this wide open expanse where I'm out in the fields of open, flexible life, the life substance, and the I am, and beyond that, the deeper I am, the worlds which appear in the middle of the I am. When I come back to the head, then I feel like, things get sucked in. Like you said, there's a vacuum activity. Yeshayahu describes this in the book as the satanic mill, which functions inside the head in cognitive yoga.
It feels like so.
The sucking, it's like another mouth that you have on top of your head that eats, but it just eats by devouring this other experience, our whole being, and it changes us into, locks us in a little closet.
Wow.
And I feel that the thought then becomes, it's quite large, but it reduces to mental pictures. I see the tiny mental images in here, in my mind's eye, and then it comes into my head, and it kind of gets trapped in the interior of my skull. And I say, oh no, wait, I'm totally back in my body.
Yeah, I'm back in my body.
And they just bounce off the interior of the skull, basically. But if you can keep the eye open out there, the I am open.
You mean at the same time when I'm in my body?
Yeah, and then look back, then you can see then you can watch the process. See, it's a shocking process, but it's to be seen as like just taking report notes. So we recognize, there is this dying, electrified aspect into my head. There's also this experience of living thinking out there, which is intuitive, where I'm in the midst of living thinking, of living thoughts. And then contrast the difference between them. How does the life out there die in here? And then how can the dying in here be enlivened through the heart, so that one can follow the heart path out into to meet the thinking out there and to meet myself.
So
I become,
let me do that circle. I'm there in the life. Wow, when I look around now, I can experience how the thinker is reading or knowing all the stuff around me. And well, it's in a way it's a very peaceful place, although there's like movements all the time. So now I go back to see the head. Okay, the black hole is there. Let's go through. Whoa. Okay, now I'm in my physical body, and the light here is, well, if I see light, for example, in that lamp, it's how can I say this? It's qualitatively so like tiny version of the light that is there. And now, if I go, like you said, I go to my heart and resurrect that idea of light in the lamp, I'm there again in my thinker. But it's not like I go to my heart and I push it, but it's more I go to my heart and I let the thought of light, and it's like the light awakens me, or the light thinks me awake in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's an interesting experience, because it's like you said, it's not through my own activity, but it's like I give as a present something. And it takes me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a cosmic adventure we just went through.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for following quite slowly and asking me to clarify myself and to go back and forth between these aspects. If we were to follow this through, and we hope to do this in future videos through the whole cognitive yoga process, then we'll focus on the percept side, where we're looking at the base bow even more, and then trying to spiritualize a little bit the sensation and the appearance of this insight, and then also trying to go back and forth between this pure thinker that we experience there and the pure perception, and try to open up the gap between them and find a way through there. So there's many different ways that we can search through the labyrinth of this complex place of contemporary consciousness.
So if I just say some observations, so this is part of the cognitive yoga, all right, and we can also etherize or spiritualize our perception, not only thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And how I feel now, it's like I'm more grounded. My body is full of energy, and now if I want, I can become aware of that light, life, and even love that I am, that is shining, that I am shining back to my body, back to my heart, feeling my heart's connected there, and feeling my head. My black hole is even like, it doesn't feel so bad anymore. It's like necessary thing somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My dear brother.
My brother.
And happy Halloween.
Yeah, thanks for watching.